Whoa.
Okay. Doing, Jeff?
Oh, I am doing wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing well.
Although I just went up to the courthouse and
Oh, yeah.
forgot that we had a meeting here.
Oh, yeah.
So I wound up taking one of the scooters back.
Oh, nice. I still haven't ridden on those scooters. I'm too nervous.
Oh,
I've
really?
had too many friends break a ball on a, not the scooter, but the skateboard. Two friends broke their leg.
Oh, wow.
But I know I want to skateboard, so not for me.
I don't go very fast and
Yeah.
yeah. but
Yeah.
I do actually
See, I
find
like
that.
to go fast, that's why I'm not getting on one of those things.
I do find them useful. I've actually taken them quite a few times, needing to get from place to place in a hurry downtown.
Yeah.
Has anybody had an exposure to COVID that we should wear a mask for? Okay,
Not
well, I think
that
I'll just wear it just because.
Okay. Yeah, we're expecting quite a few people, I think.
Oh, really?
Well, the planning commission admin people, and then we might have, I think, is Jeff coming in person, Richard, do you know? If anyone else from the
He
RDC?
indicated to me that he was.
Okay, so
Don't believe everything you read.
Well, how would I know?
Hopefully it was.
That's-
That person says June
That's
7th.
misinformation.
Okay, so today I correct myself. I've been corrected by my esteemed colleagues here that today is Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. So Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Margaret Clemens,
Here.
Shannon Ray Randolph,
Here.
Bernie Veritas,
Here.
Jeff McKim,
Here,
Jerry Pittsburgh.
Here,
Okay, so we have 5 members in person, and then I'll call the virtual attendees. Dee Owens,
Here,
Jim Stainbrook, Julie Thomas,
Here, and I can't share my video, can't start my video. Thank you.
and then Jim Stainbrook, you're on mute. Are you able to hear us? Okay, I'll come back to you. So we do have 7 members and a quorum.
Okay,
Madam President,
yes, sir.
just, I guess, since they can't come on video, they're not really able to take action.
we're not taking.
We're not taking. this
Well,
is
even
an-
a roll call, I mean.
Okay,
actually have Dave here.
they should be allowed to now.
So I was just gonna say, play it safe maybe and wait until they can share video.
Do we have a quorum without the people?
We do have a quorum, but we're not gonna take any votes. so-
Yeah, we're not taking any votes anyway.
I know, it's just, I just wanna make
Yeah,
sure that
thank
we're
you.
following
There's
appropriately.
Julie, okay, hi Julie. Okay, she has video, and so there's Dee, there, hi G. So we have, and there's Mr. Stainbrook, so we can mark him here. And Mr. Stainbrook has his hand raised.
Well, I was just trying to make sure I was here, Margaret. This is a different program, as it were. Don't let me confuse or hold things up. Apparently I am here. I'll try to get my hand down now.
Okay,
There.
great.
Okay.
Now, before the meeting began, there was some informal discussion about changing the agenda. Is there someone here who is on our plan commission who would like to make a motion to discuss item number 2 first? And if so, I'd be glad to hear that motion in a second.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the agenda has been amended. Oh, well, it has been amended, and so we can now vote on the agenda as amended. Ms. Nestor Jelen?
Okay, I'll go ahead and vote to move the item 2 under residential or under administrative business to item number 1. Shannon Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Bernie Veritas,
Yes.
Jeff McKim,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
yes,
Jerry Pittsburgh,
yes,
Jim Stainbrook,
I'm not sure what we're doing, but what the heck? I vote yes.
it's to approve the agenda. Julie Thomas,
Yes,
okay, and then Margaret Clemens,
Yes,
okay, so the majority, yep, so
Okay.
8-0.
so we start then with the first item on the agenda, which is the residential tip discussion. And if, who will be leading us through this discussion? Is it?
Actually, we will have a quick presentation by the redevelopment commission and then our legal department.
Okay, please join the table.
Here, actually, this is more fully charged than I thought it was. So,
is this in the packet? Is there information in the packet or is this?
It's on page 119.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I got it. I'm on that page, I thought. Okay, gotcha, I see.
For those of you who don't know me, I am Richard Martin. I am the president of the County Redevelopment Commission at present. I've been in that position for several years now. The commission was approached some time ago about the need to address the affordable housing issue in Monroe County. And while the commission has some ability to influence the affordability of housing, doesn't have a great deal of opportunity to do so, but we do have some specific things that we can do in terms of providing primarily infrastructure that would help to reduce the cost of housing. And with that in mind, we started to look at where there were opportunities in Monroe County for us to use our redevelopment authority to become involved in efforts to reduce the cost of housing, at least for some segments of our community.
Sorry, Richard, just 1 second. Dee and others online, can you hear us okay?
No, it's not the best.
Okay, we'll try to speak up as loud as we can. The video, I'll have to contact tech services. It looks like they didn't update, so sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
We have recently completed a project in the Vernal Pike area, or working on another project there. And that project is in what we call Bloomington east or west side TIF area. And just north of that is another TIF area, which most of us call the North Park Development Area. Formerly, it's the State Road 46 redevelopment area. Recently, we issued a bond to carry out a new project in that area, which will essentially take Curry Pike and connect it to Arlington Road by utilizing Hunter Valley Road. So we're gonna have to build a bridge across the creek and bring that Hunter Valley Road up to standards so that we can complete the circuit, which was originally 20 years ago. We now have that going to move forward. As part of that, we thought about using the northern part of that TIF area to help us with this concept of a residential TIF, either by placing some residential units within the existing TIF or by splitting that off and creating a new TIF district, which would be more dedicated towards residential development with a lesser emphasis on commercial. The south side of that 46 TIF is almost all commercial. That's where the new Ernst Health building is. That's where the new EMS property is. And so there is a fair amount of commercial development there. And we have determined that there's enough revenue in the entire TIF district to pay for the extension of Curry Pike along Hunter Valley. What we don't know yet is how we can split that off to create a new TIF district, which would have enough revenue coming in to actually engage in projects that would be useful for the community. We think it's possible. We're in the process now of evaluating what opportunities might exist, and that's what we want to talk with you about tonight. So the existing TIF district is essentially that area on the screen there, which is in purple. We have been thinking about taking the portion of it north of 46, which is in Bloomington Township, and turning that into a residential TIF. The existing PUD for North Park already has a fair amount of residential zoning in place in that area as part of the original PUD. And there, he has some areas highlighted there that you can see where residential TIF of varying densities was placed in that particular PUD. And she's got the number of units that are actually available in each of those areas. So there's a fair number of units that are already permitted in the area. What it lacks is some roadway work that would have to be done. And we think we have some ideas about how we can do that and how we might be able to fund it at some point in time. However, it's not quite clear that that's going to be sufficient for what we're anticipating is a much larger need over time for the residential development in the community. The current TIF is good for about another 10 years. So if we do nothing in 10 years, that TIF will expire and there will be no more opportunity to gain TIF revenue to do projects there. However, if we split that off and make it a new TIF, then we can create a TIF district that would have a lifetime of in the vicinity of 25 years, which gives us a much longer period of time in which to pay back bonds, so we can borrow money to actually do some significant projects. So our concept is that we would take that existing area, we would add to it a parcel, which is kind of, it's not kind of surrounding, which is an open field at the present time, and add that to the existing part of the TIF. And then look to properties which are north of this TIF district, essentially along Arlington Road, which are not currently developed, and adding them in to make a much larger residential TIF area. And that's what we want to consider. Now, I think you have a map of that area too. Like I say, most of this is coming from a document that planning department prepared for us on the residential TIF that we had from several conversations that we had earlier this year.
So there's another page that shows the proposed areas.
I'm trying to find it.
Okay, because there's only 2 maps in there.
Are you talking going north of Arlington or,
Yeah.
okay, so the big, there's a couple of really large properties that are
Yes.
just north of Arlington, that's what you're talking about.
Use that one. Okay, so at the bottom part of this, you can't see all of 46, but you can see the areas that are outlined in that aqua color. The ones that are south of Arlington Road are for the most part in the TIF district which exists now. And we would migrate those into a new district. We would also add the one parcel which is on the southeast corner there, which for some reason was not in the original TIF. We would add that in. You may recall for some of you that that was a proposal for a large apartment complex for students at one point that never kind of got off the drawing board. And then we would add parcels to the north, and you can see there are some fairly large parcels up there which are not in use right now. Most of them are vacant land. There is, from what we can tell, only one active farming operation up there, although there is some agriculture going on in some of the areas. Primarily it's row crops that have been planted. You can see the fields there, but here the existing uses. So a lot of the land is vacant at the present time. Some of it has been developed, as you can see, and it's been developed with roadway stubs anticipating further development at some point. In fact, there's an easement along one of the properties that's there that's vacant that makes it fairly easy for us to acquire an area for a roadway. We've looked at some roadway options to connect things in there, but we won't know about what's going on there until we get farther into this. But that's kind of the concept we got. The area which is in the North Park PUD could go with its current PUD zoning, or it could be rezoned to further residential development in the area. We haven't seen the big commercial development that was envisioned many years ago, and we probably won't at this point. We don't think we're going to see any big box development out there, which is what part of the original plan was. But we do have opportunities for development of the property to the north. One of the things about this is we have sewer available in the North Park area, and we can get sewer probably for the areas that are north of that, either by connecting into the city of Bloomington, if we can get them to agree, or connecting in with the facility, which is at North Park, which has a plant down on Hunter Valley Road. There'd be a little more pumping involved there, but it's conceivable we can do that. Thing about sewers is that it enables a smaller land footprint per dwelling unit, which enables us to reduce the cost. Land is a significant part of the cost of the dwelling unit. And if we can reduce the cost of the land, we can put homes in there at a more affordable price. Guess I'll stop there. Jeff, you want to pick up anything else you've got?
Well, I would just say that
we talked about not only being in the Bloomington Township. That's because Richland Township does not meet some of the statutory requirements for inclusion into a residential TIF district. Housing per growth per year is one of the criteria, and Richland exceeds it where Bloomington is well below that. So I've talked with the developer, and he is not set with the current PUD, and he is willing to explore other options if that's something that the redevelopment commission and the plan commission think would be advisable. So I think he's open to any kind of thoughts along those lines. And you're talking about the North Park development? Yeah. So I think the legislation is relatively new for residential TIF districts. So I think there's a little bit of a learning curve, but I think it makes sense. I think probably the one thing I would add as far as a project within kind of this red area here is there's a stub on the 46 further north, on the north and south side of the road. One of the projects that we would look to open kind of a lot of that residential area up is to build the road from the end of the current road to that already stubbed area on 46.
But where is that?
It's about where Jackie's got her cursor right now. If you drive out 46 toward Ellisville, there's an area, you go up to the top of the hill, and there's two pads, stub pads.
Is that where people are selling
Yeah.
roses and stuff
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah,
So it would run from there back down to that Stone
Stone
Branch, is that what we
Yeah.
call that thing? Yeah.
And I would just also add that the county is in the process of purchasing a lot, or has purchased, or is in the process of purchasing a lot of things on the south east side. And I think the overall intention is, one, to finish off Hunter Valley Road, but then also make some kind of a community event space, park space there. So it would go well with any kind of residential development.
And Stone Branch would be the entrance.
Can you show us Stone Branch on there? Because I got a little.
yeah, it's right here. It runs north and south.
Okay. All right.
When you say park space, are you referring to the workforce development project with the Limestone Institute or park?
I think that, well, it's always been, I think they're both one and the same, is that it's the quarry land there on the corner. I think there's a lot of different envisioned uses of it, and I don't think any of them are mutually exclusive.
We do have some constraints there as a result of the PCB contamination that exists on one of the parcels, which is there now and is under remediation. So we do have some constraints in terms of how we use some of that project.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
I was just curious about getting a copy of the proposed area. I would really like to kind of be able to do a side-by-side comparison. It would have been nice to have that included in the packet, knowing that you had the document. Been trying to get a sense that I've been following the redevelopment commission's discussion. I even think the discussion Mr. Smith gave the commission about affordability and housing and things like that would be very beneficial for the plan commission. I would echo that to you, Ms. Nestor, Ms. Director Jackie.
Yeah, one of the things that we did was, let me elaborate on that if I can a bit.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm following that, so like just having that proposed document, so I completely understand the area that's being proposed and asked. Go ahead, Richard.
As I said, we've been working on this for a while this year. One of the things we did that he referenced was a presentation that Steve Smith gave us. Steve, some years ago, had done a presentation through the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, and I asked him to reprise that. And he went through a typical development project to help us understand the costs that are involved in development. And since what we could do is influence infrastructure costs, we needed to know what portion of a development project is actually something that we could influence. And so it was a very informative presentation about the way costs occur and the kinds of variables that go into making a project successful or not, the distinctions that happen between owner and operator occupied, rental properties, how that affects the funding that's available, everything we could think of. I believe that entire session is probably on CATS, because it was the redevelopment commission will have recorded that.
It is. on
Well,
that.
or on Zoom on the county webpage.
Yeah, yeah. It
But
should be
if you
on.
have a date, or, and also I would also echo the desire to have a copy of the package and a date to the reference materials, because without it, it's almost impossible to consider.
Well, we're not asking you to formally consider it yet. We're looking for, oh, we're not gonna do this kind of stuff. We don't wanna expend redevelopment commission resources, time, energy on an area that's not going to be productive. We will shift to look for other opportunities. What we're looking for is a sense that, yeah, this looks like it might be the kind of thing we would like to support, and it is consistent with what you have in your comprehensive plan at this time, because that's the requirement that we have to meet, is to make sure that we get a consensus from the plan commission that this proposal would meet the requirements of comprehensive plan.
I don't have enough information, but Mr. Veritas,
So Richard and Jeff, are these single family residential, mixed use, multifamily? What do you guys, what's the redevelopment commission thinking that you're wanting to put together?
Probably a variety.
Okay, that's what I would guess.
Yeah.
And then, so the arm that you think that the redevelopment commission has in affordable housing is being able to leverage the resources in order to build the infrastructure.
Yes.
Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah. That's essentially that's what we can do. Now, there are some other options that we may have. I mean, there are some places that have been able to purchase property set aside for that, but we're not looking at doing that. Our roadway construction to give access to properties is probably the thing, which is where we have the most experience and we know it works.
So you would open up this property, forgive me, because I'm trying to understand. So the redevelopment commission would open up this property and it would have a red border around it. And then the property contained within it would still be private property that people would own. And then interested people would come in and start designing subdivisions, start designing layouts, start designing neighborhoods in this footprint. And if they do it in this footprint, there are certain resources that the redevelopment commission thinks that they can leverage in order to do things a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to
Yeah,
just to
that's a
boil
fair
it
way.
down? So then so the redevelopment commission will not get involved in the lot design, lot layout.
No.
Layout of what the homes are gonna look like. It will be up to the developer, the design engineers, whoever's involved to do
It's
all
up to
that.
you guys to do that. That's not our.
I would,
Say that again, up to us, what do you mean?
Well, that's the plan commission's establishes that kind
But
of.
it would go through the
Design
standard, it would go through the standard process.
Standard
I'm
process.
talking about process, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
necessarily.
Be the standard.
Okay,
Mr. McKim,
So how difficult would it be, do you think, to have the package treatment plant serve the, I guess, the northeast or the northern part of this, this proposal? Because that would definitely dictate the timeline. The city isn't gonna, approve any sewer extensions, at least according to what they've said.
Well, we looked at the area of the north part, which is to the northwest. And there's a little bit of rock that's got to get moved, but we can move sewage from there down to that plant. The plant actually has manholes on both sides of the road of the creek down there, and it's set up to do it. We could also take sewage probably from parts of the Arlington Road area, because we can do that with a force main. Now, on the other side of Arlington Road, that's a different story. That would be a fairly major project to do that. Although it's not unlike things that the sewer district has done already.
Okay, probably need a lift station.
Several.
several, yeah, Ms. Behrman?
Yeah, I had a concern about water and where that would be coming from, because I know at Arlington and 46, I had a development fail because water pressure from the Ellisville area just not get there. Didn't know if you had taken into consideration which where the water's gonna be coming from and how that is.
I have no idea. There are water territories here. In fact, we may end up getting in a fight with somebody about the sewage from the northwest side of the north part, because it might be a different district. And you don't know about those things until you get in there and you start doing it and
It's
find out.
like
what's
Woodyard is on cisterns and wells and then just north
Right.
of there, it is low water pressure. And I had someone tell me there should be a moratorium on any more development there.
Yeah, we'd have to look at all of those things and figure out what's going on.
Okay.
And just because we've got a sewage plant doesn't mean that people are gonna necessarily use it. I mean, I don't think we can build affordable housing without a sewage plant. Treating of sewage. It takes too much land for the septic systems, and the price of land is a significant contributor to the cost of housing.
What kind of target do you see for the affordable housing, Richard? What's the number?
A moving target. I mean, we would like to see if we can get some things in for what, 250,000, something like that, but I think that in reality, by the time we actually get stuff there and on the ground, we're 300,000, 350,000 now.
I also think the redevelopment commission has talked more about percentages of the, median income, 80 to 120%. Is kind of the target that they'd like to shoot for.
Some of the funding that we would have available would be based upon meeting certain kinds of income targets.
Is that
And
the
some of these,
median
now
income
that's talking about
nationally
owner occupied. Some of it
or
might be rental.
locally? Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure,
That's, I don't know the numbers, but that was kind of what we.
but that's
talked
the
about.
local from hands. Kind of median
Well,
area
that big is
income.
not.
They have like a, well, they have a different calculation. Well, I'm just kind of curious, is it the national algorithm or numbers you're using or
No.
more localized?
It has to be localized to be relevant.
Right, it have to be local. I mean, I can, if you look at what housing is going for now, one of the, probably from my perspective, one of the best estimates of low income housing is the stuff that comes through the I've forgotten the name. The people that develop housing with the effort from the people that are gonna live in it. Habitat, right. And those houses are sold to those people for $250, $240, something like that. And there are some clawbacks that are in that too. So we may end up doing something similar. And who knows, we may end up buying land and then running the land out. We don't know what's possible or what we would end up doing. What we want to do is to create the opportunity for us to think about creative ways to do that. Because now we don't really have many options in terms of trying to reduce the cost of housing other than direct cash to people to pay them to do it.
Well, the wages are, because with all these other factors that are being added to the cost of living in our county, such as the local income tax rate, the property tax rate, it may be time to close the discussion on affordable housing because doesn't seem to be that feasible in our county. Mr. Enright Randolph?
And I just kind of have one further thought or comment on the discussion is, I'm looking for the redevelopment commission to come and express their ideas and thoughts and vision. I also listen to my colleagues to express their positions and opinions. I really would ask council member, commission member McKim to weigh in when he feels ready, because the impact of this ties up into, taxes and tax dollars, and being kind of the steward of taxpayers in a sense of county general and other funds that you oversee. I would be curious of what kind of impacts those have if we do a TIF here. Also the proposed areas, so we understand, because what I want to make sure this is very clear, what we see on the board, it expands to the north of that, right? Okay. And my final thing is, also I want to hear planning and where planning's perspective is. And affordability is a really challenge, that's for sure. And we definitely need to think outside of the box of how we can accommodate more people of this community and add more of a housing stock. And I think we have to take more of an approach just from maybe a TIF and the redevelopment commission, but we need to look at design standards. So if they can help with certain costs, maybe we can provide smaller lots for people to purchase and smaller homes for people to build. There is where we can maybe actually get to that goal of making it affordable. So thanks for bringing it to us, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple things. I think, when this PUD was written, clearly it was for a different kind of development. And in our discussions at the Board of Commissioners, we've talked about how we really want to see something really innovative. And it may be that we need to rewrite the PUD to fit that. I don't know why we can't do tiny homes. I don't know why we couldn't have various options for folks so that these homes are affordable. But I'm always concerned because the TIF is paying for infrastructure, and how do we know that that cost is going to be passed down to the homeowner? We don't, and that's one of my concerns personally. We just may be helping a developer out, and then we can't control the market at all. And so how do we ensure that they're affordable? And other options I think we need to look at are things like parceling the land for sale and let individuals build homes. That way you don't have neighborhoods that look like everything's the same, and people can build what they can afford, not build to the, not having to buy to the spec of the developer necessarily. So I think there are a lot of things we'd like to look at, and we'd like to be innovative and creative. My concern still exists about how that infrastructure savings gets passed down to the homeowner and it doesn't land with the developer. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Mr. McKim? Yes,
Well, first of all, Mr. Martin, thank you for bringing this. I do like the idea. I've been kind of following the residential TIF legislation ever since it came on the horizon, and I do think it's got a lot of promise here in this particular area. Although I'm a little bit concerned about some of the comments that Tammy made about water pressure. That's obviously an area that may constrain the development. So I'm just looking at the zoning for everything in the area, and it looks like, so what's already in North Park is already in the PUD, and that may already be adequate for what the redevelopment commission could see developing in the North Park part. And then it looks like the rest of it is mostly RE1. Is that right?
So just to clarify, Richard, because I'm a little bit unsure, is the contemplated area you're talking about, this is what would create the TIF, residential TIF, and then you're talking about maybe in the future expanding that to the Arlington area, or is this map incorrect?
We would probably do the whole thing at one time.
Okay, all right, that was my misunderstanding.
The whole thing
Okay.
is in purple, the whole purple.
No, it would be
Oh.
the North Park part plus this stuff up here at the top.
Yeah, so like that one, yeah, okay, the green stuff, that's all
Yeah.
RE1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
and I would have included this in the packet. I didn't realize that was part of
That
the
was
discussion.
my mistake. No. Jackie.
That's fine.
yes, Mr. Garrett?
So what is the target number of units you're looking for?
We don't have a target.
I saw you see numbers up there.
There are some numbers up there, but those are numbers from planning. So we are not in a position to say you should build, the planning should authorize this many units in this area. But we're in the position of saying that we can put in some infrastructure in this area that will make it possible for private enterprise working with the county to develop residential housing in this area at a cost we think will be more advantageous than if we don't build the infrastructure. We're not gonna do the planning. That's not our job.
No, the point is, nobody's asking to do that. The question is there's obviously a demand out there. It's formulated this concept. So whether the demand is 1 or 101, that's a pretty big gap. So I'm just wondering, what kind of target area are you guys looking for? Is this a red alert, or is this green, the yellow going into green? I mean, I would think that the redevelopment commission to spend this kind of time evaluating this, bringing people in to assess it, they're gonna have an idea what kind of demand is out there. Is it 10% of the existing lots on record? Is it 10% of what was sold over the last 5 years? I would just think that there would be some sort of sketch of what you would like to see come out of this. If somebody came and said, I'm gonna buy this whole thing, put your sewer line in, I'm gonna build one house, you would look at it like, what are you talking about? So there has to be some sort of thermostat or gauge where you're gonna feel like this is worth a lot.
Well, you'd have a financial model, right? I mean, you know how many units it would take and what kind of increment you would get and what kind of infrastructure that increment. would get.
Right, and that work is done by our consultants that we have that look at how this works. And has looked at, and have been involved in residential tips in other parts.
Yeah,
of the
he's
state.
got some experience.
So he's got some information about what's possible. You've got the numbers that are sitting there now, and that would certainly be kind of our threshold. I would say is that's what it is. Now, it may increase, it may decrease. But I don't know that we are in a position to do that. The other thing you have to remember is that our timeline here is 25 years. And yet so we put in infrastructure well in advance of the property actually being developed. Think about how long it took North Park to put its first building. Yet we did the infrastructure for that almost 10 years before that. And that's the kind of time scale that we need from a bond repayment schedule to make these projects work. You've got to have 25 years of being able to collect small amounts of money over a long period of time to pay for them. So we don't, we're not developers in that sense.
And I was just throwing that from a TIF revenue perspective, the residential TIF is a much different beast than a commercial TIF, because the commercial TIFs generally have an anchor. GE, for instance, in the West Side TIF, you can use that to kind of get that ball rolling. For this, it's going to be much, the time of implementation of building out lots and things is going to be much slower than you would expect in a commercial TIF with that kind of thing. So there's a lot of questions out there. And I think it goes to your, well, how many units you want. I can tell you that one unit won't pay for the infrastructure. So, you either wouldn't be able to get the funding for it at all, or you would have to have the developer back all the bonds and be willing to eat it all for their one horse, and it just wouldn't make financial sense for him to want to do that. So part of the process is shaking out, what is the minimum requirement in terms of lot size at a certain assessed valuation of a home, to kind of figure out where's your break-even point from there. So that's kind of how you get your minimums from a financing perspective on how many units and things like that.
The other thing is part of this is going to be commercial. The areas that are right along 46 will end up probably being commercial, which is the way they are zoned right now.
Right.
And we would be taking advantage of the added revenue we would get off of commercial to make this residential TIF work. At least we're assuming we can do that. We are examining whether the state's going to allow it and to what extent we can have a mix of commercial and residential TIF, because we get a much better return on a much better cash flow for paying bonds off of commercial than we do off of residential. You just think about how much the value of an acre of residential property is versus what it is for commercial property with a building on it. You can see the kind of difference that there is there. So we will depend upon some commercial.
Yes, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Okay, I have several things. So I'm gonna run through some things here real quickly. Because I think Richard and I are the only two in the room that watched North Park develop from nothing. I mean, literally nothing. From the time that we were on, the 46 connection wasn't even complete when I came on the plan commission, right? So I know that that corner down there, if you'll go back to the red line map, in the original PUD, that corner there by the interchange, there's a quarry there still, right? An abandoned quarry. And there was talk about filling it in, and then there was talk about not filling it in. But I also believe that at one time that area there was meant to be used for like hotel motel. Is that still on there, or is that gonna be sucked into the residential?
Well, I think it's gonna be sucked into the quarry.
Okay, right.
Well, I think
You see, and I don't know what your footprint is exactly, you know, because I brought up my aerial view on my map on my phone, which helps a little bit. These are awfully small, but so my question essentially is, in the original PUD, there was some land in that corner for hospitality use or whatever. And that's gonna go away if the residential goes,
Well,
Is that correct?
it's gonna go away
just
because,
because of the,
well, I
where
don't
it
think
is.
we can build the infrastructure that's necessary to support it at this point.
Okay, all right,
And I would just, part of that property you're talking about has, since it was formed, has had some the environmental restrictive
Right,
covenants
right.
on it. That would make it extremely difficult.
right,
They don't want us to change the flow of the water any way, shape or form down there.
right. And I know that at one time, there really was serious conversation filling in that quarry. You know, which I thought was not really a serious conversation, but apparently some people did think it was. Okay, so my next question is, because you remember the conversations at Stony Brook and Bluebell Court. You know, is that connection now feasible because there's a ravine there?
Well, the problem before was that since Hunter Valley Road was not connected through to
Right.
Arlington, it forced the traffic either to go out to 46 or to go through that subdivision up into Arlington Road.
Right, but you did mention eventually making that connection.
That connection would probably be made at some point. And because that area there would become part of the residential TIF. And so we could think about extending that neighborhood to the south.
Right, okay. I want to come up here for just a minute, kind of point some things out. Okay. This piece north of Hunter Valley, there's like a big open, it's an industrial use of some sort.
That's all Holding Quarry.
Okay, so that's Hoadley Quarry. That's not gonna change, it's gonna stay what it
I
is.
think they're gonna quarry.
I
that
think there's like
over
one
on
residential area right down here.
Stone.
Or one
I don't think
residence.
there's nothing on the north side of Hunter Valley Road that's residential.
I thought there was one house.
It's all zoned mineral
I
extraction.
don't think so.
Maybe not, okay. But anyway, going back to that map.
Trying to figure out how to do the video. Yeah.
Time down there.
Okay, so the point I wanted to make is that right now you have this intersection being improved with the roundabout.
Right.
I mean, arguably improved. You know, I realize in Monroe County, that's always subject for discussion. But so you have an improved there. So really, if you think about this, if you're doing low-income housing here and you have this connection to Arlington Road, okay, through Hunter Valley, and also this connection to 46, and then on down Curry, you now have a connection to employment and commercial.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for people who are low income, you know, you could even run a bus line. You know, the city of Bloomington actually might find riders there, you know.
Well, they designated some more ridership with their developments off of Arlington.
Right, right. And I know that when we talked about the college housing over there, there was discussion about city of Bloomington or even IU bus running out there,
Yeah.
you know. But I see that if you have a fairly intense use here with the potential for ridership, there is a good chance for this to go if you can sell it as bus commute kind of property. You can go to work, you can go to the store without getting in a car. You know, and I think with the current price of gas, that might become a more popular sentiment than what it has been in the past. Remember, we discussed, oh my God, how many years ago, Richard, the threshold for people changing their driving habits was $4 a gallon. Well, we've far eclipsed that now. So I mean, did our threshold of pain go up, or are we still in that range? I don't know if that study's changed any or not. But I just wanted to point out that with these connections being made, now you're introducing Stony Brook, taking pressure off of this signalized intersection all the way down here. Okay, so all of these residents in here now would have access through here to get to those west side opportunities. That would be far simpler than what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's all I wanted to point out. Thank you.
We have done some looking at future roadway possibilities. We've looked at the topography, so we know where we've got reasonable, Jackie's worked out some fairly reasonable temporary routes that we could look at up in the northern parts there. As I said, we've looked at the one road which would service most of the northwestern part of this. So I guess the other thing is, where else if not here? If we're going to do something, make an effort to deal with affordable housing issues in the county, then we need to find a place that the county can become involved in doing so. And this is the spot we have available for now through 20 years from now.
Right, and you know, Richard, I want to point out too, really quickly, or point out what you said, is the utility connections that are vital in making this work, and they're not a slam dunk. So I mean, everything we're talking about here could go up in vapor over utilities. But then the other point I wanted to make is, in terms of financial need and opportunity, Richland Township probably has the greatest area of opportunity, but it doesn't meet the criteria. So there has to be a long-term watch and some way to preserve some area for this kind of action in Richland Township, should that time come. If we can actually make the idea of a residential TIF something that can go, because, you know, the return on dollars, as you said, with your, you know, your capital stuff may not generate enough bond money. So I'm interested to see where this goes. This feels like a toe in the water, but as you said, if not here, where you can put your toe in, so.
Well, I think maybe one thing we could look at, the redevelopment commission could look at, is areas that are maybe more difficult for groups to develop. Because if you look at that map, as you come around A Cup Road and you come down the south, A Cup doesn't exist anymore, but you come around south, that area that's right there, A Cup is up, yes, thanks. It's got that little ford that goes through there, and it's right next to the creek, and you come back up around and then you hit, is that Maple Grove Road that you're right there? Okay, so Maple Grove Road. Those properties to the east are what some might define as environmentally challenging, so those are good areas for the redevelopment commission to come into. But if you look at those hillsides up there to the west of Jackie's Hand, I mean, those are highly, I mean, those could be developed.
Anything north of that, though, you have terrible problems with utility. We already discussed that with.
Yeah, so what I'm saying
the
though, is
sewer
there may be
district.
some areas where maybe it's a little bit more of a challenge for a regular developer to do something, because it could cost so much to do the infrastructure, the grading, those things. And some of these areas that are easy to develop, they would probably be developed anyway.
Ms. Brennan?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the SHARD database, and this is a national register for historic districts up in the Maple Grove area, and I don't know how that would interact with, because it would be, it's not locally designated, but it does have some review of their federal dollars.
Some of those homes are on the National Register. So
But it is a
there are certain
district, so
constraints,
there's a
no
district.
matter where we look, there are certain constraints that
Yeah,
are gonna exist. And we're gonna work around all of those. But we're looking for those opportunities, and we can't let the fact that there are constraints to what we would like to do inhibit us from looking for the opportunities to do what we can. And that's what we're about at this point, is trying to figure out what we can do. And this looks like the area that gives us the best opportunities to look for things we can do at this point.
Mr. Pittsburgh.
I want to point out too, that once you get north of Acuff Road, there is a lot of open ground and you might look at it and think potential. But north of Acuff is where you start to run into problems. You have to run a forced sewer main. You don't have any gravity flow there. So it does present a significant cost and geological challenge to develop that residential on any level of intensity.
What is the timeline now on the Curry Pike extension across the creek?
We are in preliminary design. We have we have authorized the bond. I don't believe the bond has been issued at all yet. But the status of that is, I think we're doing preliminary design work or trying to do some preliminary engineering or something like that.
I don't know exactly where we're at, but I know I have a meeting with Steve Kreider later this week, and I'm sure that'll come up. I talked to him on the phone today a little bit about that. So I don't have an update today, but I will by the end of the week.
This is the developer back bond.
Yes.
Yes. And so right now we're saving money by not doing anything.
So I just wanted to bring up, so we're coming close to an hour of discussion on this topic, and it sounds like you wanted to just have an open discussion with the plan commission, so, and this would come back again for a formal vote in a later month, so, and we can include.
And there'll be a
all
lot
this.
more detail as well, right?
Yeah, so.
The other thing I would like is the redevelopment commission meets every third Wednesday of the month at 4:30 in that youth all room, or you can find it online on the county's website. Feel free to attend, listen to the conversations, feel free to pipe in. Let us know your thoughts there as well.
Every other Wednesday.
Every third Wednesday of the month.
Third Wednesday.
So this month it's the 15th.
I expect every month we will address this one way or another.
This is going to be a topic on their agenda until.
I just want to be sure that the people who are attending via Zoom, if they have questions or if they've been recognized, or if they have statements.
I don't see anyone as a panelist with their hand raised.
Okay, great. Okay, well, wonderful to hear about this and wonderful to have it initiated with us. We look forward to more detail and to hearing more.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come talk to us about this.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Richard.
Yes, thank you.
Long time no see.
Yes. Okay, we're moving on now to the CBO work session.
We can.
So, I think Sean, and maybe just John, here's a handout of the use table, but we're just referencing part of the packet. So, for the CDO work session tonight, what I wanted to build on was the discussion that we had at the May 17th meeting, where we wanted to focus in on a few areas and use the use table and the draft zoning map to start to narrow in on, are these areas zoned correctly? Are the uses appropriate? And even looking at uses that could be considered permitted versus conditional. So I have a few questions that we will come back to as we go along, but I have some map examples that I think might help drive the conversation. So first we'll start off with the south side of town, and pulled up, I'm gonna have for each area the draft zoning map And then I'm going to have a image of the comprehensive plan that's effective in the area, and then the existing zoning in the area. So for anyone listening in, this is a kind of an exercise with the plan commission to look at how these areas are proposed to be zoned, and so that we can have the discussion using the draft use table that's in the packet tonight, and using the draft zoning map that's on the monroecdo.com website, and tying those two together so that hopefully we can start narrowing in on the use table and the draft zoning map together. So for this example, I have limited business pulled up, which is this pink area here. So you're at the corner of Fairfax/Church, and then you have Old State Road 37, the Bloomington Valley Nursery is here. You have a few businesses, Riverway Plumbing just moved in here, there's a gas station, just to orient yourselves. So the light pink here is a limited business. This is the area that I'd like to focus on for this exercise. And then on the left, I've put in just a few uses, but refer to the packet for the full list of uses that could be permitted in limited business. I just pulled out a few that I think could be providing a good conversation for instance uses that could go in this area under this draft zoning map and using these draft uses. So for instance, a continuing care retirement community would be permitted with standards. A medical clinic would be permitted. Artisan food or beverage production would be permitted with standards. A financial institution drive-through would be conditional. A veterinary service small animal could be conditional. A restaurant sit-down could be permitted with standards. A smoke shop could be permitted with standards. RV boat storage could be conditional, and general contractor could be permitted. So starting out first, we could go through any of these uses that people feel might not be appropriate. And note, limited business is oftentimes located near residential. So this is the idea that we want to have maybe walkable, commercial, or limited business to serving residential in the area. So knowing that, are there any uses on here that you think either aren't appropriate or maybe need certain standards, such as like a minimum lot size or a certain design standard that would maybe preclude certain lots from having this use, but it could be appropriate in some areas close to residential?
Are there members of the plan commission who wish to speak to the question of the director? Mr. McKim.
Well, yeah, so, okay, so I guess I'm curious why sit-down restaurant, but not a fast casual, for example.
Okay.
And I'm just looking at all the different restaurant uses, they're on the retail table, right? So we have
Yeah.
coffee, cafe, or coffee shop, which is conditional,
Mhm.
but yet a sit-down would be permitted with standards and fast casual not at all. And I guess that seems kind of inconsistent.
So I think the idea for that one is that if you're serving the residents in the area, if you have like a fast casual, especially anything with a drive-through or something that might attract people outside of the neighborhood, you could be encouraging more traffic.
Well, I can see not having the drive-through, right? Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of why I didn't mention that one, because
Okay.
I can see you might not want to have that drive-through there, but what about,
Just
like I
fast
said,
casual.
fast casual and a cafe?
Okay.
Well, yeah, could I address that a little bit?
Yep.
I think the idea, at least from my perspective, is that you're trying to design a location where people would be incentivized to create a place where people would actually come together, you know, rather than just go in and get a carry out or drive through and get a carry out or have a food wagon or whatever and have a carry out. But an actual sit down restaurant is something that you'd want to incentivize because it builds community.
Well, a coffee shop or cafe should be at least permitted with standards then rather than conditional under that logic.
I'm not sure, but that's okay.
I'll
We're
also
moving
pull
the
up
conversation
the,
kind of fast, and I know we spent a long time on that first part, but
yeah,
maybe it's because I rode my bike here and I was a minute late. Might be having trouble keeping up with everyone, so apologize for that. Could we recap that discussion just real quickly?
Which
Would you
one?
be able to, what we were just discussing with Mr. McKim's concerns, why he doesn't see that it's permitted, and then you kind of saying that we should permit that sit-down restaurant, and can we
Yeah.
kind of like expand that just a bit, because is that, if we do permit that, if I'm wrong, please correct me, you feel like we should permit the other ones?
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't see a lot of difference in terms of compatibility with limited business between a lot of difference between sit-down restaurant, fast casual, and a coffee shop or cafe. I do agree that the drive-through is something we want to avoid. And that was just literally one use on this whole page here. There are others as well. That's just the one that stood out to me.
And and just to, we're just looking at one spot where LB is.
Right.
We need to envision where LB is gonna be throughout the entire county, because limited business will probably be the commercial entity that we see in the more rural areas. So we wanna make sure that, you know, those uses make sense there as well.
I know some, Jim Stainbrook and Julie Thomas had their hand raised
Yes.
as well.
Yes. I don't know who
I
was
think
first.
Commissioner Thomas, did you have your hand raised first?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick comments, if I might. Medical clinic number 2 on the list is not a residential treatment center. It's actually just a clinic, correct?
Yeah, it would be sort of like a potential urgent care, like a smaller.
Right. Right, okay. So the ones I see issues with in terms of buffering are number 5, veterinary service. If there's a kennel included, they would need buffering from the residents. And 8 and 9, especially 9, probably would need some buffering as well from residents.
And
That's what I had.
Depending upon the restaurant, I think there might need to be buffering too, because if there's seating outside and there's music or whatever, you know, we would need to consider that, or traffic, high traffic.
And these limited business, this area in particular is considered one of the gateways in the comprehensive plan too, so we'll keep that in mind. And then Mr. Stainbrook had his hand raised.
Mr. Stainbrook?
Yes, Margaret. There, as Jeff spoke of, sit down vis-a-vis, what was the, sit down or care out. There at LB, the southwest, the southwest corner of the intersection there is a Scoops ice cream shop. People, I'm not sure how much detail is pertinent. I'm starting to sound silly to myself, let alone other folks. But people do gather there. They get their ice cream. They sit down and eat. I suppose that could be considered a restaurant sit down. I'm not sure. But people also stop, get their ice cream, get in their car, and leave. And the parking lot's rather small there. Just an observation. And then the residential here on the south side of Fairfax, as you get over here. But again, Jackie, this is very interesting, but I'm not sure just where we're going with that. You introduced it. Would you mind just saying again what we're doing here?
So the focus is on each of these areas, and I think I have 4 examples, so we'll try to keep them, if, you know, the first one might take the longest, but the idea is to look at the packet of the use table and try to identify the uses that are in the zone that I'm pointing out, which is limited business in this case, and use this actual context-based example to say whether you think certain uses are not appropriate in the limited business zone, or if you're looking at the map and you're thinking certain areas should not be zone limited business in this view that we have here. So we have, you know, approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 potential businesses that we're looking at, just as an example.
Well, what's the color coding,
So
Jackie?
if you can see my mouse, Jim, so the
Uh-huh,
light
yes, yeah.
is this LB, limited business right here, is what we're
Uh-huh.
focusing on right
Oh.
now. And this darker pink
Okay.
is rural community. And then you have, so rural community, low density, medium density, and then you also have suburban density, residential. And then this is light industrial, but we're trying to focus in on the limited business area here because that's, if you look at the existing zoning, you have the residential as primary, and then you have industrial as it's shown in the proposed. So we're proposing to change this to be general or limited business and expanding it a little bit north. So that's why we want your input, is that it's a bit of a change from what's there right now.
Well, there, that southwest corner that you're considering a change, along with Scoop's Ice Cream Shop, there's also the pizza parlor there, and the smoke shop, located there now. I don't know how, and when you mentioned the corridor entrance or the access to the area there, is it at all pertinent or relevant or even rational to say, I don't know whether a smoke shop belongs in, but that is limited business. How would a smoke shop fit with the change that's being pursued, possibly pursued?
So if, for instance, Jim, smoke shop, if you said that should not fit in limited business, but you still agree that that area should be zone limited business, we just would be creating a non-conformity. And I think that may be happening right here. There's a gas station. And so we didn't,
Right.
there's a gas station permitted in limited business. So those are some of the, that's a good discussion point. So you would not want smoke shop permitted in LB?
Well, I might not wish it, but by being there, I don't know, would it
Okay.
be, you say, permitted with standards or
Yeah. Permitted
in the
with
gas
standards.
station? That's going to stay there, and the used car lot on the south east corner. I mean, if you change this, and then are some of these businesses out of compliance? They're grandfathered, aren't they?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, three options. One is to add a gas station use to limited business, which you're opening up to all limited business. The other is to say that zoning is wrong. We should accommodate it as a general business zone, which allows gas station. Or the third option is I like it limited business. There should not be a fueling station here. And it's gonna be pre-existing non-conforming. And so over time, that use may turn into another limited business use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And then
thank you.
D. Owens
Has her
actually-
hand up, and then Mr. Enright Randolph after.
And then
Hello. Jim is pre-essent as usual. The smoke shop, I don't think that should be listed there. But those businesses tend to locate in areas where there's more poverty. And I don't know, I don't know how to say it exactly, but it kind of feels to me like it's branding an area. A smoke shop is one of the uses in a limited business area as opposed to general business. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Mine's not really. I would like to kind of circle back to like the discussion that was taking place of the idea of sit down restaurant kind of promotes traffic and such. Did I kind of get that right? Well,
drive-through.
a drive-through, sorry, with the drive-through, and that's kind of where I was going. A lot of these places are now really moving to like a pickup, like so, like this the ideology, I guess, behind that, I think is a little skewed with kind of more modern trends with the Grubhubs, the pick up and go, since the pandemic, a lot lot of these restaurants put in different practices. And I don't think, you know, the crutch should be really determined with promoting a drive-through versus people coming and sitting, because I think that these sit-down restaurants are gonna potentially create that same traffic impact that a drive-through will with their new like pickup kind of approach. Just wanted to put that out there. I think we should look into that a bit more and make sure that, you know, that's in our rationale, or at least mine, because I don't see a difference between kind of a drive-through and a sit-down, with the fact that everyone having their food delivered to their homes, or you going and picking it up and then leaving. It's causing the same congestion in the traffic, as far as traffic goes, in a modern sense.
I think you're right to point out the change in the way that people buy food from restaurants. That's recently, as you know, related to the pandemic, that's certainly been real. But man, you look at drive-throughs around town, and they've become kind of almost sites of, I think, potential hazards. You look at the Starbucks out by Best Buy, the one on, that's a disaster. That people get out on the road there. There can be, the same thing is true on the one down by Bloomington South, the Starbucks and McDonald's there.
Well, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going,
Yeah.
like, there's certain
People are
areas,
literally sitting out on the road waiting to get into the drive-throughs there.
and that's where I'm going, certain areas, yes, absolutely. So like, maybe we permit them with standards or something, I don't know, it just, if that's where I was hearing planning's position. I'm sure there's more nuances that go into the determination of why it's showing conditional versus permitted with standards. Now, I know the sit-down restaurant's permitted with standards, but then the coffee shop is conditional.
Yeah, the coffee shop is conditional.
And is that kind of why we're looking at that, I guess today, that the coffee shops are conditional, because that's kind of more of a drive-through and the
Well, it wouldn't
restaurants-
allow a drive-through. It's just we're trying to encourage uses that might be useful to the nearby residents, but if you would, I can see an argument for saying that any restaurant use that is, if restaurant sit down is permitted with standards, so should cafe. I can see an argument for that.
And that's where I'm going. I'm trying to get more
Okay.
direction from planning, because I really don't have a position in this
Okay.
except for, understanding the rationale and then making the determination.
Okay.
Mr. McKim?
Yes, and then the other that I wanted to talk about, I guess I don't really understand, is the continuing care retirement community. Is that a residential facility?
So that would be combining assisted living, independent living, and nursing home care. And they could have, a lot of times you're seeing now a flexibility of that campus so that people don't actually have to move facilities. So that was something that was in the APA recommendations.
I see.
Yeah, so is that something that you think would be, what kind of standards would you see, or do you think that's appropriate in LD?
Because I don't have an opinion, I kind of wanted to understand what that was meant. It just looks like that one is residential, unlike, or could be residential, unlike any of the other cases, right?
Mhm.
Eric, Mr. Pittsburgh?
One question. The microbrewery group doesn't seem significantly different from restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, but it's not conditional, and I don't know why it shouldn't be.
There are three comments in chat.
Okay, did you say conditional, Jerry, or did you say permitted with standards?
The restaurant coffee shop is conditional,
Okay,
but yeah, you know what, since they do have an opportunity to actually brew beer.
Yeah.
There can be odor concerns there, so it may
and a
be
little
best
bit
to be
later
permitted, but,
hours. Yeah.
right, I would say permitted with standards, yeah.
Okay. permitted
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
standards. Okay,
Thanks and I originally thought that, but you put a finer point it out for me, thank you.
okay.
Okay,
And some of it just go like wrap this conversation up, because I think there's been a lot of discussion on restaurant, cafe, and microbrewery permitted with standards. If you were to think about just as a neighbor, what kind of standards would you appreciate being on those businesses to make them more friendly neighbors to the residents? Hours,
Closing
offering,
hours, yeah.
hours, okay.
Hours, outdoor noise and lights, and truck traffic and ambulance traffic. Those are the things that I would be thinking about.
Access.
Parking.
And also like, I think Mr. McKim or Mr. Enright Randolph mentioned, if there are going to be drive up, carry out, not drive through. I mean, some of these drive-throughs like Chick-fil-A, they can't even house their workers. They have them outside on a tent. And that to me is some kind of violation of human rights. We can't call ourselves a progressive city if the workers who come to work can't even get in the building to do their work. They have to stand out in a parking lot in all weather in order to get paid. So I don't want to be involved in planning anything like that.
Okay, it's
What-
only conditional, restaurant drive-through is conditional only in the general business. Do you
Yes.
want it to not be allowed in any zone?
The drive-through, I think conditional is good just so that we can consider, maybe a good idea, but yes.
But not limited business.
Yeah,
What is our guideline for parking for a restaurant or a brew pub cafe?
right now.
Right, is
Um,
it based on capacity or?
It's based on
tabletop?
seats, yeah,
Okay.
based on
All right,
seats.
good, that's all I wanted, it's
Okay.
curious.
You would still be encouraging a minimum parking standard for all those uses? Okay, any worries about maximum parking or? Since there's no-
Yeah, I just wonder if in those instances, because you have a lot of meet me there's.
Yeah.
If you shouldn't think of maybe as, if it's permitted with standards, maybe the standard should be like 1/2 more parking spot
Okay,
per seat.
okay,
Yeah, just a thought, I don't know, that would require a lot more investigation and knowledge than I currently have, but I just know those are the coffee shops and brew pubs are the kind of places where it's a meet me there and you actually have, 3 cars for,
yeah,
4 seats.
right, okay.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so you want to go
Move on to
forward?
the next
Yeah, let's
section,
move
yeah.
forward.
So that conversation, just for reference, took us about 20 minutes, so I'm hoping that we can maybe do the next couple in maybe 15 minutes if we can, since we're
Okay.
gonna get really fast at this and know exactly what we're looking at.
That's good, Jackie.
So this area is the northwest side, so I have a commercial example for you, and this area is going to be zoned potentially heavy industrial. So the current zoning right now is general industrial and also limited industrial. So this will be one of the petitions that you have on the next plan commission regular session. But I just want to bring up that if we're switching all of the 833 zones into the chapter 802 zones, so general industrial and heavy industrial, making them the same zone, heavy industrial, you are going to be increasing the number of uses that are permitted in those areas. So considering the northwest side, the type of development that's there, I've put up a few uses, examples that would be relevant for heavy industrial that may not be under the general industrial category of uses. And so I'd like us to consider these and talk through them like we did the last time. So correction detention facilities, recreation centers, which is permitted right now. Solid waste facilities will be conditional, recycling center conditional, solar farm conditional, trucking terminal could be permitted with standards. Heavy industrial manufacturing permitted with standards, possibly scrap metal processing we had talked about before, but we can. So any of these uses that seem inappropriate, or we can scratch, or we can change from permitted to conditional, or vice versa.
Mr. Pittsburgh?
I, with solar farm, I see these areas of industry as being employment centers, and that's a passive industry, and I don't think that's a good use.
I agree.
Okay, are there any other comments? Yes,
Well, I mean, there was quite a lot of controversy about scrap metal processing in a different lot. I'm curious as to why that would be simply permitted, given that there didn't seem to be a lot of support for scrap metal processing in a location that probably was pretty appropriate for it. That seems like kind of a heavy lift then to put it here.
Yeah, so would you see it changing to conditional or just not allowing it at all? Okay,
I would argue to not have it at all in our county.
okay,
I don't know, I think as you need them, otherwise you're trucking so much scrap metal. But conditional, I think allows you to, the blowback we got before was because there was some residential adjacent to that heavy industrial zoning. So I think if you have conditions, you can make them such that if they try to locate on the edge of a heavy industrial where there is residential, you set the bar so high that if they choose to locate there, the neighbors would be less inclined to protest.
Like
Thank you.
producing a feasibility study and operational plan or something like that.
Right.
And Mr. Steinberg has his hand raised.
Well, thank you again, Margaret. I don't equate scrap metal processing with the receipt of scrap to be disposed of. I mean, to me, scrap metal processing connotes machinery and grinding and dust and smoke. And that may be a bias, to say the least, on my part. But again, expressing just personal reaction here, I'd prefer not to see what I perceive as metal processing, scrap metal processing. I'd rather not have it in Monroe County at all, but that's personal expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. Are there any other comments? Okay, Jackie, I think we beat your standard.
okay.
Let's move.
Okay, and this was just the comprehensive plan in the area. I'm just pointing this out since we want to be able to either match the comprehensive plan or where we don't match, have an addendum that says, you know, this area, we're not matching the comprehensive plan for these reasons, that goes along with the CDO process.
What is the triangle?
That is the city of Bloomington jurisdiction, and it is, we believe, the West Third Tasting Group. This is it's a brewery. It's a tasting room for Upland.
Oh, it's Upland's place?
Yeah,
And there's two other businesses.
it's Circle Prosco.
Right, I know where it is now.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell what roads I was.
Berry Plastics, is that it, or is that beyond?
That's West.
That's
It's
Circle Prosco, and then
It's on the other side of the street.
I think they also own this one.
Circle Prosco is in the old Bloomington Courier building.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was where
This is the old, oh, is this the old print?
Yeah.
The old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's facing our.
Yeah, when you guys said Circle Prosco, I couldn't get that out of my mind, and I knew it wasn't Circle Prosco, but it is Brent Pack.
So this is the current zoning of the area, just to close the loop there. So general industrial, limited industrial, and then we have industrial limited, so we're trying to consolidate.
I have a beef with the way City of Bloomington, I think, changed the facade on that Brent Pack building. Because that was a nice limestone building, and they stuck that anomaly on the front of it. It's like a board on the building.
Fair enough.
It is, I mean, because that was originally Bloomington Courier building, and then it was housed Ivy Tech for a period of time. And it was a well-designed building. They were.
So now this is a residential example that I think will be helpful for discussion, especially since the draft zoning map that we did is aligned with the comprehensive plan, but not reflective of what we believe to be the new guidance by City of Bloomington Utilities, which is limiting sewer access to residential development, but not commercial development. So the comprehensive plan has for this area, neighborhood development is this lighter shade orange, And then this dark orange is what they had called urban infill neighborhood. And then this is what is existing. So you have RS 3.5, residential single family, residential estate. And then you have RM 7, which is residential multifamily, 7 units to the acre. And then you have a PUD as well, general business. But for the purposes of this discussion, I was hoping we could focus in on urban density. So the example of uses that could go in this zone, and again, kind of the realm of discussion here is, do we think these zones are appropriate in these areas? Do we think the uses are appropriate for this zone? So I'll go through the example. So senior housing, long-term shelter, multifamily dwelling, townhome, child care center, cemetery, mausoleum, school, bed and breakfast, short-term rental, owner occupied, repair services off-site, which is just commercial light. I can get back to that with anyone that has questions. I'll pull the definition. And then, sorry, I spoke twice. But does anyone have any comments or questions on this area?
I'm just glad cemetery could be at urban density, because otherwise then we'd have to be spread out all over the place. Quarter acre lot.
Mr. Steinberg has a comment.
Well, I see long-term shelter and then cemetery mausoleum. Maybe they could be combined in one category, but more seriously, I just don't like the sound of urban at all, and urban density, oh my, density. So again, I'm expressing a personal feeling, just trying to move quickly, Jackie. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. I would like to echo that. I mentioned it at our last meeting. I think maybe rural density or county density, but not urban. And long-term shelter, I'm not so sure about in the county, away from services that are being built exactly for that population. Multifamily dwelling, I think we've overdone it in the county and in the city, and I think that should be conditional. All multifamily and townhomes should be conditional now, because we've overbuilt and we need to do something to incentivize single family homes, which is, you know, what the market really wants in our community. So permitted with standards is bed and breakfast, cemetery, mausoleum, senior housing, owner occupied, repair services offsite. Okay. Okay, that's what, those are my comments.
And
Anybody
this is
else?
just a snippet of what's in the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I have some questions about long-term shelter anywhere in the county,
Okay.
when the majority of services for those folks, I mean, if you are in a long-term shelter on the west side and you have to check in with community corrections, that's a pretty good distance.
This is, if there's a bus line right there at Walmart area, if I believe, if I'm correct, right? I mean, you have some access to services in this specific instance.
Right.
There is some, yeah, it's not some great.
But this is an exact example of the elbowing the city's doing in the county, and an inversion of what, you know, the city's becoming a park, and the park-like setting of the city is becoming urbanized, and this is just a manifestation, an expression of that, and it's entirely inefficient and probably not sustainable. So this is exactly where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, I just, you know, I think of like social services, food kitchens. You know, I recognize that there is public transit there, but I don't think the routes run on a time frame that a person could feasibly go to town and come back without a significant time investment.
I still think it should be conditional. I think conditional is okay. That allows the proposal to be evaluated on its merits. I mean, I agree, transit is gonna. have
Well, I
to
mean,
happen.
maybe they're gonna provide their own transportation for their residents. And that's something as a condition I would support. You know, if they said, oh, we're gonna be here and we're gonna provide shuttle service to all residents. Or, you know, and yeah, that might be different, but you're still adding to the traffic. And that's already pretty intense traffic area.
It's been pushed. It's been pushed. I mean, by making the downtown streets almost only walkable, the traffic's been pushed into the county. And so we have, this is by design. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Nothing.
Could you maybe give a couple more examples of where we would see this then urban density outside of this example? Like what about some of our towns, like would Unionville be considered?
No, those would be rural communities.
Those would all be rural
Yeah.
communities, so that wouldn't pertain.
Right.
You
I
could
guess
have
what I'm addressing is some of the discussion about the town homes and multifamily and making those conditional versus permitted with standards. I'm a little kind of understanding the discussion, but a little torn on wanting to make them conditional.
For the multifamily.
Yeah, for the multifamily. So I just wanted to vocalize that, and then if we're looking for more density in those other urbanized communities, I guess that would pertain to a different zone. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like they should be permitted with standards. It's a difficult conversation, and there's a couple different approaches, but I think eliminating a playing field isn't necessarily the best option. So, you know, to just take it off or make it conditional, I'm not supportive of.
Okay, so are we finished with this one? Want to move on? Okay.
So then, I believe, this is my last example. So rural communities, we picked Steinsville as an example, but we're looking for a little bit of guidance on one of the new zones that we're proposing that is not based off of a zone that we currently have. It's going to be a new zone that I think is going to help some of the rural communities and how we've responded or heard some of their concerns about the zoning in their areas. So Steinsville is the example, and they have a rural community is the pink right here. And then I'll also show, this is a designated community boundary in their long-term comprehensive plan. And this is what they're zoned right now. They're zoned high density residential and general business, and then they do have a little bit of recreation zoning. So under the rural community zoning, some of the example uses we're considering, and this area does have sewer, would be accessory dwelling units, attached and detached, single unit dwellings, home-based businesses would be conditional, 2-unit dwellings would be permitted with standards, child care centers would be conditional, schools permitted, artisan crafts conditional, tourist home conditional. Are there thoughts or, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'd like to know, how does this address the concerns about the existing zoning? What's the delta?
Yeah, so some of the concerns that I think we've heard as of late, and Tammy can speak to maybe a rezone petition, is there's actually, you know, it seems like wherever there's business zone, there wants to be residential, wherever there's residential, there wants to be business zoning. So maybe more flexible uses and not so, you know, residential here, commercial here. I know this isn't part of the example, but the institutional school, I think since that is closed, there could be a discussion on whether that should actually be a rural community zone or another zone that might accommodate a variety of uses. So that would be some of the concerns that Tammy, you want to add?
Because this would still allow, even if it were RC, it would still allow school. So if it became a school again, it could still be
Yeah.
school even.
Yeah.
without IP.
Tammy and then Mr. Pittsburgh.
Well, I mean, with the school, I mean, we don't have a zone that does multi-use so much out here, so you know, it almost needs to be a PUD, or we need to find some kind of zoning that will accommodate that multi-use that they want to use to repurpose that building. Historic preservation doesn't have jurisdiction over this, so we can't use historic adaptive reuse in this community, unfortunately. And yeah, with that red GB district that you're seeing, I believe they're wanting to propose to rezone 8 of those lots to residential right now. So we'll be hopefully seeing a petition work with them and their community to get what they think their community needs at this point.
Okay, Mr. Pittsburgh.
Two things. One, there's already a childcare center, so I'm assuming that that met conditions.
We're working with them.
Okay. And they committed sacrilege by painting limestone. But that's a whole different issue.
Too bad.
The school space, I don't know, I doubt that many of you are familiar, but when the old Ellisville School was closed, it became like a commerce center. So there was a real diversity of uses because you had separate rooms with common bathroom space. So I don't know if like a general business overlay fits that. It's really, one of the things too, is like there's a temporary shelter for women going in the facility already. As we, you know, and I realize it's problematic because it does not meet that zoning. So really, I know that there is a very loose concept of what they're doing at that building, and I think anything thrown at the wall is sticky. So I don't know who, I guess Town of Ellisville Board is actually responsible for that space.
In this one? Or
At
is it
the school.
Steinsville?
The Steinsville School.
The Stein, so it is.
Did the town buy it?
They did not, I don't believe. I think
Okay.
it's I think it was a different group that purchased it.
Okay,
Which if it was the town of Steinsville that purchased it, it might have had some flexibility under the IP zone for government services.
right.
I don't believe that's what they have.
Well, I think
They're
whoever
working
owns it, you
first.
need to sit down.
They're working first to separate the fire station and the school and put them on each their own lots with
Correct.
clear. We have not seen that petition come through. We've talked about it a lot. I think that's the first step, is to get those done. And there may be a rezone that's required to make that happen with the fire station and the school.
Right.
I'm not sure if a zoning district will be able to accommodate the mix of uses that they're intending here.
We can fix it for the fire station.
Right.
Unless we want to
right.
rezone or consider rezoning them PUD, but I think that would be. That
Well,
would be
here's the
stretch.
thing, almost every rural community has an old school building.
Yeah,
That's why they're a rural community.
yeah.
So and right now, I know like Smithville School has basically one use has been taken over by like Diamond Dynamics, baseball or whatever. I don't know what else is in there, but I really think there's an opportunity for a zoning category that is unique to rural communities because of the school building space that has to have adaptive reuse. I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's something we need to discuss.
What would be the other communities that you can think of, like?
Harrodsburg has an old school, Smithville has an old school, Unionville's school is still active,
Yeah, it is, and they don't have sewer.
right? Kirksville may have had schools in a rural community.
Kirksview, I'll jump in. there. Kirksville does not have
Okay,
a school anymore. It was torn down and the fire department is there.
okay, all right.
Commissioner Thomas?
So
Yeah.
it's a wonder.
Yeah.
I would add on to that discussion that it's also historic adaptive reuse of churches or other institutional buildings like that as well. I think you see that as well in some of these areas.
Large buildings that go defunct, you know, that whole row of buildings in downtown Steinsville that's makes up the general business is empty, like totally empty.
That's a
Just want to turn them into residential.
Like they're shells.
And that, and zoning can help to protect them from not becoming residential by zoning them business, but what we're seeing is that there's a demand for flexibility, and so if there's a priority or if there's an incentive to make it business and we want to see it stay business and other parts stay residential, we can do that, but otherwise, yeah.
What kind of grant money's available for those places? I know at one time we looked at block grants for Harrodsburg.
Yeah.
Or no, it was Smithville for sewer.
The Smithville within the, yeah. Yeah, so
I think Tammy had something to say.
Well, I'm wondering if within the RC zone, we can do some kind of conditional multi-use community center almost.
How about a make it stick district or use?
But have
You
it
can
be
make it stick,
conditional,
mode of
so
it.
that it would at least have to have BZA oversight, you know, as it has to, I don't know what the rest of it.
That's a really good idea.
I also think it protects the entity that has the structure from having to accept stuff they don't really want.
I mean, some of the other examples you gave with the old schools and churches, like, they're not in an incorporated like town like Steinsville. Steinsville's just unique, that would fit this historic downtown use here.
Right.
You know, I've seen it over and over again throughout my life, no matter where in the world I am. The building that we're discussing that's in Steinsville, even though it may not be occupied at this point, with the right vision, with the right love for the effort, those can and often do become the very anchors that make it very prosperous. And so that's something worth contemplating, because it can be an income driver for a community that is pretty impoverished. But it does take a lot of work to make that happen, and a commitment of special people, and it can't be fabricated. So, I mean, we're basically in our county and in our community really just fabricating. We're not executing a vision that creates something that, that it extends beyond that,
Is the zoning ordinance gonna be able to nail that down?
Well, it can if it protects something like a building that is iconic, and, in my hometown of South Bend, the thing that everyone pines for is the stuff that they torn down under the new urbanism, and we're going through that phase again, and who are the victors and the champions of not tearing it down? And we don't have, we're building a lot of stuff that looks alike. We don't have champions of the feel for the city of Bloomington or for the county, the ruralness of the character of our county. We're just slapping it up and,
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, somebody would come in and do something unique and novel and something that's really gonna make it a destination. But does the zoning ordinance find that? And do you use a tool like PG to be able to help somebody utilize a structure or a property for something like that? Because you're never gonna nail down what that person is gonna figure out to do there. It's gonna be interesting, innovative with the vision you're talking about.
right, you can't prescribe it. You just hope, protect the building so that somebody who comes along might be able to do something with it, but it doesn't sound like in our county and in our community. Well, it's, to me, we have a lot of people, but they're beaten down by all of the fast tracking of ultra high development of the things that people love. Yes, Charlie?
Dee has hers up. I'm not sure. who had first. I guess I just want to make sure with this rural community, we're looking at maybe like that lighter shade pink kind of.
Yeah.
And we're proposing everything within there to have, obviously, with these uses permitted with standards, conditional. And we're only looking at one rural community.
Just as this example. Yeah.
Well, okay, so, just as I'm pulling up a number of different, documents, there's been a couple different things like the urbanizing, or the Monroe County urbanizing area. Well, let's not talk about that one. They were more in line with creating these rural communities defined by the communities, so having multiple rural communities.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of goes maybe where Bernie was talking about, can we create an ordinance that can provide these communities what they're wanting? And that was part of the discussion I was hearing as well. What are some of these driving forces, outside of business wanting to be residential and residential wanting to be business? We'll always be dealing with that. But I don't see how we can make a cookie cutter approach to this and not be like, this is the rural community of Smithville. This is the rural community of Unionville.
So new zones for each rural community.
That's how I really enjoyed some of the discussions prior, as we looked at, when we had the first consultant come in and discuss kind of some of their ideas and vision of a new zoning map. And they were talking about having more of a community overlay or zoning to that community. And I really like that idea. I never really saw too much come forth outside of a lot of discussion, but I think that's a better approach to look at these, how they're unique to the community. What amenities are missing? Is there a grocery store there? No, then we should permit a grocery store to be there, and it should fall within like the Steinsville area,
There's allowance for general business is the highest zone, and there's allowance for high density rural or residential, which is the most dense zoning district, so
Right.
it
Well,
shows that the
NRC.
zoning isn't exactly what's on the ground, yeah.
well, it gives a lot of voice to the rural community themselves. And, to try to create one zone for them all, I think is going to be very problematic and not create that unique organic characteristic that those communities already have and preserve that as well. So
What if there was just I'm not saying to reduce down the character, because each of these areas are unique, but if, let's say Steinsville had 10 uses they really wanted, and Harrodsburg had 10 uses they really wanted, couldn't we just use one zone and make those 20 uses permitted and give them that flexibility?
for me, sure.
Okay.
But from my observation of this discussion, it seems like there's more, I think, allowable, permitted with standards and conditional uses driving this discussion. But my subjective personal opinion, which I don't give that often, yes, I would be fine with that.
Okay. Thank you. And Ms. Owens?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Two things. I don't recall if farmers markets are included here. That is a big deal in rural areas. Is that under artisan crafts or something? Where would that fit?
Yeah, let me check that, Dee.
Okay, while you're looking, I think I've asked this before, certainly read it, but I've forgotten. A home-based business does not mean I'm on a Zoom call with work, so I have to go get a conditional use, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It would have to be not a certain exclusion. So, if you had people coming to your home or drop off of packages or things like that, that's what triggers the use.
Yeah, farmers market is not included, it looks like, in RC. That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, sure, that's included.
That's a good point.
I have one to add too. Do we have something like a museum fall in line with anything like this?
That was a good point.
When I think of visiting rural communities, I think of sometimes there's a small museum or some sort of thing that calls back to the original character of the area.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we have educational facilities, trade schools that could be permitted here. And then,
Cultural facility is the definition.
cultural facility.
Yep,
And
it's in that
that's not
definition.
permitted here, so we'll add that.
That's a good point. And I'd like to just remind everyone that at one time, I don't know how it is right now, but as of about 10 years ago, this area of Steinsville was one of the few night sky rated exceptional stargazing centers in the country, and certainly in Indiana. And light pollution should be tended to. There's that observatory nearby, the Link Observatory. And that could be a draw if we accentuated it.
That's why it would be nice to have kind of a unique zoning for each community.
Yes.
And then you can preserve that by maybe having more strenuous light pollution.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think that's the uniqueness. I think that's a good suggestion, Ron. Thank you.
Okay. So that was all the community examples that I had, so.
Okay,
Go
we
back
still
to
have a big
regular.
agenda. Okay, so, yeah. The first item on the, well, are there any department updates?
Yeah, so I wanted to just give a quick update. Drew Myers is now our senior planner and Tina
Yay.
Behrman, assistant director. I think most of you heard us say that. And then also, at the next admin meeting, I wanted to get together and do another example of the CDO. I'm hopeful for your feedback of how this went. And if you want to send me an email, or we can talk after, if there's something we can do that's a little bit better on that. And then I also want to just make sure, if you guys ever want statistics of our office, like number of variances, petitions, things like that, I can collect that pretty quickly and get that to you maybe next meeting then.
Thank you very much.
But that's
Thank
all I
you
have.
very much. Okay, and congratulations to Drew for your promotion, and to Tammy for your promotion, and thank you all for your service. Thank you all.
Yes. You.
Okay, and so we now rely on you to guide us through all of these other items of business. The first item under administrative business is the Meshka Storms minor subdivision performance bond release. And I think, Drew, you're up.
Yeah, so if I can take over, you have, I don't know how it's set up, multiple mice over here.
Yeah, sorry.
I've caught 5 raccoons, 3 possum, 10 chipmunks, all within the last week.
Must have a nice garden.
Yeah, we could just do like a really-
Okay.
yeah, share the screen.
Okay, so those pages that 132,
122.
122.
How many planners did it take?
Thank you. Okay, so this is the Meshka Storms minor subdivision. They're looking for a bond release. Basically, the petitioners applied to release the full performance bond amount that corresponds to the required construction of a cul-de-sac off of South Omaha Crossing. The next step is for the petitioner to apply to have the road accepted to the county inventory. The ordinance states that a 2-year maintenance bond is required for the construction that has been completed to the specification laid out on the approved construction plans. We've had the highway department come out and inspect the work, and the petitioner or applicant has also submitted as-built for the completed work. So basically, they are just looking for the final approval to have the performance bond released so that they can proceed with their format of providing funding to the contractors that they had acquired to do the work for them. So staff recommends releasing the performance bond with the condition that all requirements of the stormwater report must first be met. If we want to go over any of those requirements, they are included in your packet from the stormwater department. Here, right in front of you on the screen, is the original plat document that we had. And this, you can see over here on lot 2, that's where the cul-de-sac was constructed. So yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Drew?
Commissioner Thomas has her hand raised.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, this seems to be a bit premature because they should be asking for the release of the performance bond once they've met all of the stormwater requirements, right?
Yeah, so part of the stormwater requirements are fairly quick and easy. So they're like final grading and seed straw. So I think by the time they get to the regular session, they may have addressed these items.
Okay, then that's fine. But if they haven't, I won't support this because it seems like they haven't fulfilled it until they've completed all the steps. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, then we move on to the second item, P&G Plan Unit Outline Plan to rezone property from PB to PUD. And that's PUO-21-1, and Ann is not here, right?
Correct. So just a quick update on that. There was that petition was continued to a date that was to be determined. And so they have an update that they're going to be starting the court proceedings in later June this month. And so if we want to actually have that go to a specific plan commission date, we can put that on a future administrative agenda to vote for that to go on to a certain agenda. This time, it seems like the timeline may be fairly long. And so we can also see if the petitioner is open to continuing to a certain date or withdrawing it. We just don't want to lose track of the petition because it was continued to an unset date.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments, suggestions, or yes?
Would planning prefer us to set a date?
I think that would be either set a date to have it continued to, so it can only have 3 requested continuances by the petitioner and they're out of their 3 requested continuances. So if you just end up putting it on the agenda and notifying them, they would be asking you again for either continuance, or you could vote on it, or you could ask them to just simply withdraw it. But at
So
this point,
planning's comfortable kind of with the current status, I guess.
sorry.
I was asking if planning department would like us to set a date to see it, or if they're comfortable with us putting it on the agenda when it's more timely, I guess. I was just,
Yeah, it could
referring
be
to-
several years before they are finished with the court proceedings, possibly.
okay.
Mr. Pittsford?
They've used up their 3 requests for continuance.
Yeah, but then the plan commission voted to allow them to continue, so the plan commission is not limited to the number of continuances.
Right, I say we request a withdrawal because it sounds like an open-ended.
Okay,
That's
so
my,
we could talk to them about putting it on an agenda, and I think on that agenda, you would have to then say, this is going to go to this agenda, that might be the next,
and if it doesn't, they withdraw the petition.
yes,
Okay,
so.
so I say,
Okay, put it on the agenda.
put it on the agenda for our next meeting if it can.
Okay, probably July at this point. think.
Right, I think July's probably more fair anyway.
Okay,
And you can just give them a heads up that we know they're not gonna be able to meet that timeline,
okay,
so we can just get them officially withdrawn. There's no need to keep letting them booger up our
For years.
agenda.
Yeah, for years. Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the next one. Okay. REZ 22-3 Kings Road Farm rezone from RE 2.5 to Ag RR.
Okay, so this one's mine as well. This was heard at the last plan commission meeting and received the proceedings to go to the a second hearing or final hearing. So a few just updates to this one. I added in a RE 2.5 use table for reference. That's in Exhibit 3. And then I also included all the letters of support within the exhibits as well. Previously, all of the letters of support were just presented in a PowerPoint format because they all had come in post the publishing of the packet. So no real updates other than that one. If anyone has any questions or requests for more information, please let that be known. And we can get that on for the next meeting.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Myers or any comments?
Commissioner Thomas, did you have your hand raised or is that from the last time? I apologize.
Sorry, I thought I lowered it. Sorry.
Okay, great.
So the letters of support are probably the biggest change in this one.
Yes,
Oh, you had already described the last meeting, right?
I was absent from the meeting,
All right,
but they
they
were included in the presentation. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next item was withdrawn, so we're gonna go to a new item, REZ 22-4, Young Trucking Construction Shop rezone from IG to HI. And again, Drew, you're on. You're earning your promotion.
I'm almost there. Yeah, right. One moment, let me scroll to the page here. So this will be the first time that the Plan Commission hears this one. This is a rezone request from General Industrial or IG to Heavy Industrial for the purposes of establishing a trucking terminal at this site. So it is located at 1238 North Loesch Road. There is a waiver for final hearing for this one. Basically, you know, the petitioner came to the planning staff with the intent to have a particular use on the property, and through the use determination process, it was determined that the use would fit best as a trucking terminal. And that use was not permitted in the IG zoning district. So in order to permit such a use, they requested a rezone to heavy industrial. And there was a decent amount of conversation had within the plan review committee for this petition, and it was basically that the petitioner, the plan review committee voted 5-0 to forward the petition with a positive recommendation. They did have some following concerns or recommendations in that the petitioner limits some of the uses on the subject property that are currently permitted under the HI zone by way of written commitment to kind of reduce some of the differences in uses on the property. And some of those examples include things like garbage, rubbish collection / removal facilities, rock crushing, wastewater treatment facility, water treatment facility, and adult-oriented business, if that last one could actually be removed if possible. So there's already been some discussion about limiting the uses here. But right now I'm just looking for anyone that has any questions or comments. And again, this one will be at the next meeting.
I really admire how you followed up on all that, and it looks like it's taking good shape. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Mr. Enright Randolph?
You could change your date to June 7th or when the proceedings, when you go down, so as it comes to the end. Sorry, I should have just sent that to you.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Does anybody online want anything? I think you're handling it well. Let's move on then.
Jim Steenberg has.
Oh,
his hand
Mr.
raised.
Stainbrook?
Well, Margaret, this is going to high industrial.
Heavy industrial.
Heavy industrial.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, Jackie, Margaret.
With limitations.
Yeah.
Well,
heavy
that's part I'm really chagrined, believe it or not, to say spot zoning, but this almost seems to me to have some of the elements of spot zoning. You go to the different designation in order to permit it, but then they concede that they will exclude garbage, rubbish collection, etc. So it seems almost to a layperson as though it's being specifically tailored for that petitioner. I just have a concern about, while again, spot zoning is not necessarily illegal, there is such a thing as spot zoning. And this seems almost like a classic example, but I've overtalked that already. Thank you.
Thank you for your insights, Mr. Stainbrook. Anybody else on that discussion item? Mr. Enright Randolph?
Just the location and the proximity to one of our county trails.
Mhm.
If that should be in consideration, the proposed rezone.
What property does this?
I don't
adjoin?
really have any suggestions. The trail itself is on the west side.
Yeah.
So there's probably not anything, just wanted to bring it up. It's
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe
it's already
the petitioner
buffered on the
might
other side.
want to put
West side
Some-
connector.
bike refuge
Yeah.
there.
Oh,
but that's
yeah,
your-
bike
but
racks
that
on
might, that's
the-
way down the
Okay.
road on
Yeah.
the site plan, but just
Okay.
wanted to bring it
Good
to
stuff.
planning
Here's Vernal.
attention.
Yeah.
So this would be Curry.
Okay,
So Drew, they're listing some of these as having a Curry Pike address. So are they joining the old Wetterall facility?
I'm not sure which facility that would be.
No, wait a minute, it's not. That's a new facility there. Because there's Hall sign down in the corner, right? And then, well,
Chelsea is here. I can talk to it a little bit.
Okay.
To where that's at. So this is right behind MDD Spartan Nash, and the, West Side Implements
okay,
is behind that off of Lush.
okay, so that's where they're driving.
It's
there.
actually part of the MDD Spartan Nash subdivision.
Okay, that's why they have a Curry Pike address on some of those properties.
Yes, on some of those properties,
Right.
yes. So like half that subdivision has access off of Curry, the other half, which includes this property, have access. off
Right,
of Lush.
because there's the utility or the rental, equipment rental, west side.
I want to thank you for your patience tonight.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and are there any other questions or comments?
Just the comment that there is a pretty big gap in some of our connectivity to the trail, but it would be off-site and it would be kind of there at, never mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure where
It's this section right here, but
I can't see. Sorry.
that section right there. But anyways, it would be really great to see some connectivity. I don't think it pertains to this petition, so, yeah.
Okay, okay. Anything else, anybody? Oh, okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next item, which is ZOA 21-11. Ordinance 2022-12, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 801 definitions. And this is Ms. Nestor John.
Yep, so this will just be heard at the regular meeting, and it's just addressing some changes that happened at the commissioners meeting on May 11th. So because it went to the plan commission and the commissioners, and now it's going back to the plan commission for those final edits.
Okay, well, we look forward to those final edits
And they're
at
in the package. so.
next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, they're in the packet, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but.
it's a long package.
Yeah, it is. And we had a bet, that well, not a bet, but a little, we would like this meeting to end at 7:45.
Yeah,
Okay, ZOA 22-1,
yeah.
amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 815 site plan review. Okay,
And those are gonna be some technical fixes from the ordinance that was just passed. We're just cleaning up a few items that we've come up against.
clean up on aisle 3.
Yeah,
Then we've got ZOA 22-2, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 817 violations and enforcement.
yes, so item 5 and 6, we're gonna table at this point. I just wanted to bring those up as potential ordinance changes that may be happening in the future, but we'd like to just table those for a bit.
Okay, well, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell Ann she wins.
Thank you. Well chaired. Well chaired.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
There is no actual vote to adjourn.
Technically, if it's already on, if you're just following that.